This week's Torah portion, Dvarim, it's the start. So the Torah portion of Dvarim is, the first Torah portion of the book of Deuteronomy. It's the beginning of Moses' final speech. And he starts off by encapsulating, right, talking about the 40 years in the desert, and he retells some stories. And I want to focus on the story of the slanderous words that the spies said of the land of Israel, because Moses tells us a different story. This time we're told, right, well, let's go back to what we were told the first time. So the first time we're told, Shlach lecha. It starts top down. God says to Moses, if you want, send spies. And we know the bitter ending of that story. They came back, spoke slanderous words, and we got the punishment of 40 years in the desert, because none of that generation were going to, deserve to enter the land. So it starts top down. This time it says, the story begins differently. Vatikrivun elai kulchem vatomru lishlach anashim. This time it's bottom up. Moses says, this time, you want to know what actually really happened? A different version? The Israelites, you guys came to me and said, we want to send someone. Why the different viewpoints? Why not stick to the same story? What's going on here? There's a beautiful Hasidic saying, or a vort, about the power of a story. Stories are so powerful, right, like the Haggadah, that when we tell a story with the right sort of intentions, a story told in the future can change what happened in the past. The focus point, the viewpoint of a story is important for what we're passing on, for how we're going to change ourselves, to bring redemption, and the purpose of stories. What is the Torah? So now I'm going to bring one of the greatest commentators ever of the Bible, perhaps the greatest, Rashi. Rashi notices something fascinating. Vatikrivun elai kulchem. Rashi looks and he understands that Moses is trying to teach us something by giving us a different angle to the story. Why this Shabbos are we getting a bottom-up angle? Last time we learnt about this, right, in Shlach lecha, what was the focus, the moral of the story, the first time we learnt of the slanderous words? To have faith in Hashem. That was the purpose then. Rashi knows that we're in Shabbat Chazon. Rashi knows we're just before Tisha B'Av. Rashi knows Moses knows this. So the viewpoint has to be different, because the story has to change something else. Vatikrivun elai kulchem, Rashi says, he brings the Midrash, what in fact was going on? You know what it means, Vatikrivun elai kulchem? It wasn't that the Israelites were huddling to Moses, say, send some spies. What actually happened there, this language is barbaric. What actually happened there was that the young boys and girls were pushing the elderly in the wheelchairs and the walking sticks, pushing them to get to Moses to say, let's send already, we're eager to see what they're going to say. And the elderly who could walk pushed down the prime ministers and parliament members. They had no moral code whatsoever. That's what was going on. You think the ending was a bitter ending? The start was the bitterest part about it. There was no unity whatsoever. And I think Rashi knows this. Rashi knows that when we're coming into Tisha B'Av, he says, if you read the Megillah Veicha, this is where it started. So we need to retell the story of the slanderous spies, the story of, but to give a different beginning. The beginning that is connected to this week's Torah portion, because when we read it in this viewpoint, we read it in a way that the emphasis is on the way we need to be menschlach, the way we need to behave towards one another, to be united despite our differences as a people. Faith is important, but in this Shabbos, what's more important is how to be unified. So we need to tell the story in a different way, so that today we can change what was then and change the future, so that next year we won't have another Tisha B'Av. Thoughts on Dvarim? Shabbat Shalom.